The story begins with an adventurer and his son reading a book. The father shared how he became an adventurer under the protection of the World Tree. The son asked his father where the World Tree was. The father paused for a moment, then said that deep in the forest there was a small village where people from different races lived together. One day a spider dropped an apple from the tree to a boy with green skin. The boy smiled, picked up the apple, and thanked the spider. He also gave thanks to the World Tree before running back to the village. Each day the villagers greeted the World Tree with bright smiles. This is a story of a man who reincarnated as the World Tree. Before all this happened, the main character's name was Kotoba Sakai. He was a true hikikomori, a shut-in who stayed in his room all the time. He didn't go to school, didn't work, and didn't talk to anyone. In fact, he barely even counted as part of society. He almost never left the house. However, he somehow went outside for some reason. When he finally stepped out and went to a store near his home, something terrible happened. A man with a knife was inside and tried to rob the store. He shouted at the woman behind the counter, demanding money. Sakai's first reaction wasn't fear, it was worry. The life of the store clerk was in danger, and he saw it happen right in front of him. Then he realized something. The girl looked familiar. Wasn't she Kasumi Kaide? They used to go to the same university? Kotoba had liked her back then, but she had never really noticed him. He hadn't expected to see her here of all places. He doubted that she would even recognize him. He wondered why she was working in a small store like this, but he didn't have time to think about it. If no one did anything, she would die. Sakai acted without thinking. He ran at the robber and shouted. He shielded Katie from the robber. The man turned surprised and stabbed Sakai in the chest. As Sakai fell bleeding, he managed to tell Katie to run. His vision blurred, but he saw her escape the store. As everything faded, one final thought passed through his mind. Everything was okay. She was safe, and for some reason, that made him feel at peace. When Sakai woke up, he saw a woman standing in front of him. She was a goddess. She told him she was sorry that his life had ended the way it did. Sakai had tried to protect a girl from a robber, but he died in the process. The goddess explained that even if he hadn't helped, the result would have been the same. Sakai began to think that he had died for nothing, but the goddess said that wasn't true. She said she admired his choice. He had lived alone and still chose to save someone else. That, to her, was meaningful. Even if his life had felt empty, she believed it had value. Still, Sakai thought about her words. Deep down, he knew his life had gone nowhere. Nothing had changed until the very end. It felt like he had never really existed at all. The goddess apologized for bringing up his painful past. She offered him a chance to be reborn in another world, but she needed his permission. She asked if he was willing to accept this second chance. Sakai thought about the offer. Reincarnation reminded him of those stories he had seen in anime. The idea of starting over felt like hope. He accepted the offer without hesitation. Before sending him to the new world, the goddess said he could make one request. Sakai thought hard. He remembered the knife that killed him and asked for a power that would stop something like that from ever killing him again. He wanted to be strong. Strong enough to protect others for real this time. He wanted to become someone like that. The goddess smiled. A soft glow appeared and strange circles formed around the protagonist's feet. She said it was a wonderful wish. He would now live in another world. It felt warm like a mother's hug, so warm that it made him want to sleep. At that moment, he died and was reborn. He felt like he was rising to a new level, leaving his old self behind. When he opened his eyes, he discovered that he had become a plant. He had wished for a body that could never die, but he didn't expect this. He had no idea what kind of life was waiting for him now. Suddenly, someone's boot stepped on him. Sakai felt pain. A large boy walked past and said that Aruto was getting on his nerves. He said someone like Aruto should stay low and crawl at their feet. Aruto was small, thin, and looked scared. The big boy said farmers' children would always stay farmers until they died. He told Aruto to follow him because he was the village chief's son. Then he and his friends laughed and walked away. Sakai called the big boy rude. He was still hurting from being stepped on and was trying to stand back up. He noticed the small boy hadn't left yet. Sakai thought the boy would step on him too, but Aruto looked at the small sprout and asked if it was okay. He wondered if it hurt when the big boy stepped on it. He felt sorry for the sprout and called it a poor thing. Aruto placed some sticks around it so others could see it and avoid stepping on it. Then he said goodbye and left. Sakai thought Aruto was a kind boy and felt thankful. He knew he would never forget what the boy had done. He wished for Aruto to always be happy. A strange magical energy came out of Sakai and flew toward Aruto, who slowly disappeared into the distance. Time passed. The sun burned hot in the sky. Sakai was very thirsty. There was no rain and the heat only got worse. If this kept going, Sakai felt like he would dry up completely. He hoped the boy would come and water him. Then, a small slime appeared nearby. It saw the tiny sprout and watered it with a simple wave. Sakai thought the slime was very kind, but he started to worry. Was everything really okay? After giving water, the slime looked even smaller than before. It made a few sounds and Sakai felt thankful. Because of the slime, he would be able to live longer. Sakai quietly wished for the slime to live a good life. What Sakai didn't know was that a bit of his magic had reached the slime. After that, the slime began to visit every few days to water the sprout. It seemed to gather water from somewhere else because each time it came back, it looked a little bigger. More time went by. One day, while trying to gather even more water, the slime suddenly changed. It evolved and grew larger. Even with this change, it still only thought about the little sprout, so it went back again. At the same time, in a small village near the sapling, a group of children stood inside a chapel. They were gathered in front of the village priest. The priest explained that today was the coming-of-age ceremony in the village of Pokot. He said that when children turned 14, they took part in the ceremony to receive a skill, a special gift from the gods. The priest added that some skills were powerful enough to let people become adventurers. Aruto, one of the boys, wondered what kind of skill he might get. The priest said he hoped each child would receive the skill that suited them best. One by one, the children stepped forward to take their turn. When it was almost Aruto's turn, a large boy pushed him aside and told him not to expect much. The boy said Aruto would probably get the most useless skill, while he believed he would receive a powerful one, like the Holy Sword. Aruto quietly nodded and waited for his turn. The priest called his name and Aruto walked up the stairs and approached the magic board. The priest asked him to open his status window and take a look. Aruto held out his hand. Suddenly, the board lit up brightly. The light filled the chapel and made everyone cover their eyes. When the light faded, Aruto's status window appeared. It showed his name and his skill, Blessing of the World Tree. It was marked as an ultra-rare skill. This skill gave him a 200% growth rate in all of his stats. The priest was shocked. He said he had never seen or heard of such a skill before. He told Aruto how amazing it was and congratulated him. The people inside the chapel cheered. Someone said it was incredible. Aruto's parents said they were proud of him. Aruto smiled, happy with the skill he had received. The large boy stood off to the side, waiting for his turn. He told Aruto to watch carefully as he would now show everyone his powerful skill. The priest called him forward. The boy touched the magic board and opened his status window. But instead of a rare or powerful skill, his window showed a normal skill called Cursed. The boy was devastated. His face fell in disbelief. The crowd went silent at first, then people began whispering. Even though his father was the village chief, many in the crowd called his skill useless. The boy kneeled there, humiliated. After the ceremony, everyone went home. A girl with a bow on her head ran up to Aruto. Her name was Beatrice. She asked him about leaving the village and becoming an adventurer. Aruto greeted her and said how he couldn't believe he could really become one. Beatrice reminded him that he had a UR skill, so he was likely to succeed. Aruto replied that if that was true, then he would give it a try. He raised his hand and said his skill was called the Blessing of the World Tree. He recalled how in the forest there was a small sprout growing. Maybe that was the World Tree. Aruto, who had received a rare and powerful skill, soon became a renowned adventurer. 20 years passed since then. Aruto, now older and retired, came back to his home village, Pokot. He held a small boy in his arms and thought about the Blessing of the World Tree skill. The boy asked about the World Tree. Aruto answered that it must be the protection given to him by the World Tree and it was surely granted to him. He also reminded him that it was important to always respect and take care of the World Tree. The boy, Jiru, agreed. Beatrice, who became Aruto's wife, just smiled at her husband's and son's exchange. Aruto then recalled that the fence around the tree he built back then must have probably fallen apart and needed to be replaced. He told his son to go ahead and that he would catch up soon. Jiru excitedly ran into the forest. The sprout from 20 years ago had grown. Now, Sakai stood about 2 meters tall. He wouldn't die even if someone stepped on it, but his trunk was still quite thin. Lately, he didn't seem to grow much, and he doesn't know why. Jiru stood in front of the tree and wondered if it was really the World Tree. Sakai replied that he wasn't. He was our protagonist, Sakai, and this year he had turned 20 years old. The fence around the tree had almost completely fallen apart. Jiru decided to remove the broken fence and clean up the area. Sakai angrily asked why he was getting rid of something so important. The boy didn't answer but kept cleaning and fixing the place. Sakai asked the boy what he was doing. That small fence and some slime were all he had for 20 years. So why was the boy clearing it away? Suddenly, Jiru stood in front of the tree and stayed quiet for a while clasping his hands together. He thanked the World Tree for its blessing and for giving his father the UR skill. Sakai was confused and asked what a UR skill was. Now that he can see it, Sakai thought Jiru looked a lot like the little kid who had built the fence before. Could this really be his son? Suddenly, a voice called out to Jiru. A fat boy with a sword on his shoulder walked over. It the child of Aruto's fat bully in the past. He asked Jiru what he was doing there and why he needed the tree. He said he was going to use it to practice with his sword because it was the best one around. He told Jiru to move out of the way. Sakai felt scared. Jiru stood his ground and said he wouldn't let the fat boy harm the tree. He told him that this tree was special. In 100 years, it would become the Great World Tree. The fat boy laughed and asked if such scrawny-looking tree was a world tree. Then he grabbed Jiru's shirt and angrily warned Jiru that if he didn't move, he would cut him down first. The fat boy swung his sword, but Jiru jumped out of the way. Jiru grabbed a stick from the ground and asked the fat boy to stop. He didn't want to fight, but the fat boy swung again. This time, Jiru blocked the attack with his stick. The sword flew out of the fat boy's hands and landed in the ground. The fat boy, now angry, started fighting with his fists. He threw a punch at Gil and told him not to act tough. Jiru held the stick to protect himself. Then a voice said, "Enough!" It was Aruto. The fat boy quickly greeted him. Aruto told the fat boy to leave the tree alone and to be more respectful toward nature, otherwise he would provoke the wrath of nature. The fat boy apologized and said he was going home. Aruto looked at Jiru with a serious face, then smiled and patted his head. He told Jiru to keep using the sword techniques he had taught him. He praised Jiru instead of getting mad. Afterwards, Sakai watched them leave and felt happy. The two actually had made him a new fence. Sakai wished Jiru he would also find happiness too. Still, he confused with something else. Weren't they calling him the World Tree? After Jiru left, Sakai's life went back to normal. He would probably grow again soon, but his growth had slowed down. Would he still become a big tree, or would he stay small and plain? Just then, a huge slime came out from behind the bushes. Sakai was surprised by its sudden appearance. The slime stretched its arms toward the tree and started pouring water on it from both sides. Sakai wondered if this was the same slime from before. The slime kept watering the tree. Sakai noticed how much bigger it had become. Sakai thanked the slime and then saw several small slime blobs nearby. He wondered if they were the huge slime's kids. Each of them aimed water at the tree from different directions. Sakai realized that while he had already been watered, the little ones kept taking turns watering him more. Now the tree had enough water to last a long time. Sakai felt grateful and sent good energy to the slime family. As time passed, Sakai grew taller. He reached about 3 meters in height, but after a while, the growth stopped again. Sakai started to worry. Maybe he needed more nutrients. Just then, a black wolf stepped out of the forest. It looked cheerful for some reason and walked up to the tree. Sakai wondered what it needed from him. The wolf looked around, turned around, and started forcing something out of it under the tree. Sakai knew what this pose meant. He wanted to tell the wolf to stop, but he was too late. The wolf let out a satisfying bark with a relieved expression on its face. The wolf buried its waist in the soil. Just then, Sakai noticed something changing in his wooden body. Sakai realized he had started growing again because of the nutrients in the wolf's waist. It was expected since it also contained magical power. Realizing he received nourishment, Sakai decided to be grateful to the wolf too. He also wished it a good fortune. Time went on and day turned to night. One day the same wolf returned, but this time it had a different appearance and could talk. There were also other wolves accompanying it. The wolf came to the tree and gave its apologies for doing something rude. Sakai was surprised to see it evolve and gain common sense. Sakai couldn't really hate the wolf since it was thanks to it that he was able to grow a bit. The wolf knew an apology wouldn't be enough, so it gave Sakai a gift, monster carcasses. The wolf explained that they would make better nutrients than an excrement. The wolf pack offered the gift as a way to make up for the leader's actions before. Sakai accepted and thanked them. The dead monsters were full of nutrients and magical power. Sakai believed he would grow even taller now. From then on, the wolves came often, leaving dead monsters behind. Thanks to them, Sakai kept growing stronger. After some time, a spider built its web in the tree. Sakai had grown tall, reaching a height of 7 meters. One day, 2 woodcutters came near the tree, led by an old man. The old man said the tree had grown tall enough. Feeling proud, Sakai agreed, realizing he had become big. He could hardly believe he was once a small sapling. He looked at the people closely and noticed by their clothes that they were from the same village as the boy he remembered. He didn't understand what they wanted or if he could help them somehow. Then the old man gave a command, "Cut the tree down." Sakai was confused and could only scream inside. A spider came down from a tree using its web. Nearby, an old man stood and laughed. Sakai, the tree, didn't understand why he was being cut down or what he had done wrong. When one of the woodcutters swung his axe, a group of wolves suddenly jumped out of the forest. They stood in front of Sakai, blocking the woodcutters. The wolves growled and showed their teeth, ready to fight. The woodcutters stepped back, keeping a safe distance. Sakai felt happy that the wolves had come to protect him. The old man yelled, confused by what was happening. Then he said they wouldn't touch this tree and asked for forgiveness. Sakai felt relieved. He was safe, for now. But he knew it had been a close call. He wished the wolves could hear him so he could thank them. Even though they couldn't, Sakai sent them a wave of positive energy to show his gratitude. As the woodcutters walked through the forest, The old man muttered about how it was a shame. He said that Sakai was a strong, perfect tree and that it would have been great to cut down, but he didn't understand why the wolves acted that way. One of the woodcutters pointed to another tree and asked about it. The old man said it wasn't as good, but they could try it. Just then, a small demon flew out of the forest. It gave the woodcutters a wicked smile. Time passed. Sakai kept growing and finally reached 10 meters tall. Red fruits appeared on his branches. He didn't know what kind of fruit they were and couldn't eat them himself. One day, the large slime returned with its children. It came to water Sakai. He was thankful and wanted to share the fruit with it. He hoped it would enjoy the gift. The slime ate the fruit. A strange light appeared around it, and from the look on its face, Sakai could tell it was pleased. Then the slime began to shine even brighter. A burst of magical energy exploded from it. A queen's crown appeared on its head and a royal cape wrapped around its body. Sakai realized the slime had evolved again. With a female voice, the slime began to talk. She thanked the world tree for its evolution fruit. Sakai is very glad that she liked it. Sakai realized that his fruit helps to evolve. When the wolves brought nutrients to the tree gave them fruits in return. The wolves happily ate the fruits. Right after, a burst of magical energy covered them. Their bodies changed. They stood up on two legs like humans, and their bodies became well-defined. The wolves were shocked by the sudden change. The wolf girl said the transformation happened because of the fruit. Another wolf agreed, saying it must be a gift from the world tree. The pack leader said that if they stayed in this place, they would be protected by the world tree. One of the wolves suggested that they should settle there. The leader agreed and said it was a good idea. The wolf girl asked if just the 4 of them were enough to protect the tree. The leader replied that they should return to their den and bring the rest of the pack. They would all live together near the world tree. Before they left, the wolves thanked the tree and promised to repay its kindness. As the wolves walked away, Sakai was surprised that they could now walk upright and even talk. He also noticed that more beings were calling him the world tree. He realized he had grown quite large, maybe even one of the biggest trees in the forest, but he still thought calling himself the world tree was too much. Later, a group of people came to rest under the tree after a long journey. Some of them asked an old and weak priest to hold on. From their clothes, it seemed they were members of a church, and their priest was very sick. Sakai dropped a single fruit to the ground. One of the ministers picked it up, cut it into small pieces, and gave some to the priest. The priest slowly ate one piece. Suddenly, magical energy filled him. He stood up full of strength. The ministers were shocked and asked what had happened. The priest said he wasn't sure, but he believed the fruit saved him. He was certain that this tree was the same divine tree mentioned in the writings of his eldritch faith. The ministers began to worship the tree. They praised its miracle fruit and wished for the divine tree to live a long life. Sakai thought they were a bit too dramatic, but he was glad he could help someone. He wondered what kind of religion they followed and didn't really understand what this eldritch thing was about. A few days later, a new creature showed up under Sakai. It ate one of the magic fruits. Sakai realized he tended to attract various things. A magic light appeared again, and the hungry lizard changed into a lizard man. He thanked the tree for helping him. Sakai on how the lizard man's evolution was way too much. The lizard man then said he wanted to give something in return. He spat out something and placed a strange-shaped stone on the ground. He explained that it was a special gem called the Dragonite gemstone. It formed inside a lizard man's body over many years and held magical power. After saying thank you again, the lizard man left and promised to return someday. Sakai thought the gift was nice, even though he didn't know what to do with the stone. Still, he accepted it because it was given with kindness. Sakai just realized that even those who had never met Sakai before kept calling him the world tree. He wondered if it was written somewhere that he really was the world tree. For now, he decided to take the feeling for now. A few days later, another stranger arrived. This time it was a man. He knelt in front of the tree and asked if he could take the gem lying there. He said he was a merchant named Mokor Bolt. His group had betrayed him and left him alone in the forest. Sakai allowed him to take the gem and even gave him a magic fruit. The man asked if the tree had blessed him. He thanked the tree for everything and went on his way. Later, Mokor went to a shop and showed the appraiser the gemstone. The appraiser said it was the legendary Dragonite. He asked the man where he found such a stone. Mokor had read about magic fruits in a book and remembered eating one. He went to a chapel and asked the priest to check his status window. Before, there was no UR skill, but now there was. The priest said it was thanks to the blessing of the world tree, which had increased Mokor's luck 3 times. Mokor believed it must have been the world tree's doing. That tree he talked to was indeed the world tree. The next day, he returned to the tree. This time he came with guards, goods, and better clothes. He told the tree that he was the same merchant who had been blessed before. He said he had bought the land and would protect the tree as a way to say thank you. Sakai felt happy that the land had been bought just to repay the favor. Mokor's hired guards also put up a sign saying the tree should not be cut down. This way, no one would try to harm the tree. Mokor said he would be glad if the world tree would watch over him in the future. From that day on, the merchant's private army guarded the area. Just as Mokor had promised, they took care of the tree. But the peace didn't last long. One day, a group came and started digging around the tree. The priest with them said the tree was sacred and needed to grow somewhere else. Sekai begged them to stop. The priest said they would take the tree and care for it themselves. Sekai realized they were the eldritch from the other day. One of the guards shouted that the land belonged to Mokor Merchant Company. The intruders got scared and ran away. Mokor was shocked by what they had tried to do. He checked if the tree was all right. Sekai thanked those who helped save him. For a while, Mokor continued to protect the tree and life was peaceful again. Winter came and after some time the tree grew to 10 meters tall. However, there were still many problems. It was very cold and it snowed every day. Sekai couldn't protect himself from the freezing temperature. He often felt cold even on normal rainy days, not just in winter. Many different insects started living in his tree. It would have been okay if they were harmless, but most of them caused him pain. Sekai understood that the insects were only trying to survive. He wouldn't have minded if they were cute, but most of them were pretty gross. He understood that insects also needed a place to live in, but he hoped it was not on his body. He felt disgusted by the creepy feeling when the insects crawl all over his body. Luckily, one creature helped him solve this problem, a cave spider. Sekai learned its name from some people who visited and talked about the spider living in his branches. Cave spiders usually lived in dark places like caves, so it was strange this one chose to stay on him. Sekai felt thankful for the spider. It ate all the insects that were harming him. He realized that spiders could be very helpful. He wasn't sure if giving his fruit as a gift was enough to show thanks. But after the spider ate it, something amazing happened. It evolved into a forest spider. After that, the spider spread its web along the tree's trunk as thanks, and this helped keep Sekai warm. Life became much easier for him. They lived together, helping each other, in a true symbiotic relationship. One day, a heavy snowfall covered the land. From deep within the forest, a group of creatures came looking for shelter. They were goblins. One of them suggested they hide from the snow beneath a large tree. Sekai noticed something unusual. One of the goblins looked more advanced than the others. He was the only one who could speak. He said he felt a strange power coming from the tree. The goblins then decided to build a new village there. Sekai, the tree, was surprised. They were planning to build a village right under his branches. The goblins shouted for others to bring more wood. The goblin children ran quickly carrying logs. It seemed the tree would stand at the center of their village. The goblins didn't touch the tree itself. They didn't try to cut it down or use its wood. Maybe they were afraid of hurting it. Sekai thought that giving them a few branches wouldn't cause harm, so he dropped some to help them. The talking goblin was shocked at first, but then realized the tree was helping. He said the wood was perfect. The goblins thanked the great tree and continued building. Everyone worked together. When the village was finished, the main goblin said it would now be their home. Sekai noticed that his branches were stronger than the others, and the goblins seemed to know it too. They used his wood to build the elder's house. The goblins cheered with joy. From above, Sekai watched and felt warm inside. Later, the goblins made a fire. Some sang songs, some played music, and others just sat around the flames to stay warm. They wanted to thank the tree for helping them. The leader brought out a special goblin drink and poured it onto the tree's roots as thanks. Sekai tasted the drink and found it delicious. Can a tree even get drunk? The goblin village was growing well at first, but recently they started having trouble with food. To help them, the protagonist dropped some fruits. The goblins ate the fruits. And after that, something amazing happened. They began to evolve. Some goblins who couldn't talk before started speaking. They began to look more like humans. Before, all goblins were short, but now they grew much taller, with better physique. Even the female goblins were all cute and have good figures. They were almost distinguishable from humans. Among the male goblins, some became much stronger, with bodies that looked like gorillas. They started to look more like orcs than goblins. At night, they sometimes had parties and danced. Sekai enjoyed watching them have fun. The spider that lived on Sekai also became friendly with the goblins. He was happy about this. Both sides got along well and didn't fight. The spider even ate fruit from the tree just like the goblins. Sometime later, something changed, surprised the goblins. One of the forest spiders became an arachne. She learned how to speak and could talk normally with the goblins. This made their friendship stronger. Arachne went to chat with the goblins and Sekai noticed her talking to the goblin leader. It seemed like they made a deal that helped both sides. He found that interesting to watch. Arachne and her spiders lived above in the tree while the goblins lived below. Their homes didn't get in each other's way, so there was no reason to fight. The goblins gave the arachne alcohol and the arachne made clothes from her webs in return. The goblins probably suggested this trade. The spiders also made bedding for the goblins, and in exchange, the goblins built small tree houses for them. It was a perfect relationship where both sides helped each other. The goblin and spider villages grew together in peace, and the community continued developing. At some point, Sakai started to feel bored, so he decided to give names to the goblins. He named their leader Rinda. He called the hardest worker Gonzalez. The cutest girl was named Henri. She liked sewing and became close to Arachne. The girl with the biggest chest and the most fashionable look was named Kurin. The shortest old goblin was called Gobchin. Every day the protagonist watched them. Before he knew it, the village around him had become full of life. Recently, the goblins had trouble finding food again. Gonzalez said the monsters nearby were too strong, so hunting would be dangerous. Kurin added that there were only a few animals that could be eaten. She asked the leader what they should do. Sakai had expected this. For the past few years, he had given too many fruits to different monsters. Those monsters had changed and turned into human-like creatures. Because of that, the ecosystem was ruined. Sakai wondered how he could help the goblins. He couldn't move from his spot, but then he realized he could move his roots. When he tried, it worked. Some roots came out of the ground, but they weren't something anyone could eat. He wished they would become something like vegetables. Then one of the roots turned into a daikon. Sakai was shocked. He pulled out another root and tried growing strawberries. To his surprise, they grew. He thought it was amazing, so he used more roots and started growing different vegetables. After a few days, many vegetables were growing from the ground. The goblins who came to visit were surprised and didn't know what was going on. They guessed it was a gift from the world tree. Unsure if the vegetables were safe to eat, they took a bite and found them delicious. They called the others and shared the news. The goblins began cooking the vegetables. After tasting their dishes, they were very happy with the results. Even Gonzalez agreed the vegetables tasted and smelled great. Rinda said they were perfect with meat. Sakai realized that his roots could turn into any kind of vegetable. Just like that, the goblins' food problem was solved. Some goblins were chosen to take care of farming, and their village continued to grow. Later, the goblins brought a bowl of stew to the world tree. Rinda said the vegetables were very tasty. They thanked the world tree and hoped he enjoyed the food they made. Just then, someone called out and reported that one of their companions hadn't returned. Gonzalez shouted that goblins from a nearby settlement had taken her. Rinda was shocked by what he said. Gonzalez declared he would never forgive them. Rinda asked him to wait, saying they didn't know the other goblins' true intentions. She wanted to solve the problem peacefully, but Gonzalez insisted he wouldn't let them go unpunished and said he would crush them. The elder told him no. Sakai thought Henri looked cute and understood why the other goblins would get attracted to her. Just then, Arachne came down from a tree. Rinda was surprised to see her and asked if she would join them. Arachne said she would. Rinda thanked her and called the others together. He said he would try to talk to the other goblins first, but if things went badly, he would need Arachne's help. Sakai silently hoped everything would be okay. The next day, everyone came back with Henri. Gonzalez laughed, calling the other goblins pathetic. The others asked if she was safe, and Henri confirmed that she was. Suddenly, the goblins from the other settlement tied up in Arachne's web explained that monsters had recently grown stronger, making it hard for them to hunt. They just wanted food. Gonzalez was still angry that they had kidnapped someone. Rinda admitted that the monsters had become much stronger and hunting was nearly impossible. Henri defended the prisoners. She explained that their situation was bad and asked Rinda if there was a way to help them. Rinda was surprised but said that as long as it didn't happen again, maybe something could be arranged. They did need more help after all. The prisoners thanked him. That day, the goblins celebrated Henri's safe return. For them, every small reason was enough for a celebration. Sakai quietly watched. He guessed Henri had been scared and hoped she would feel better soon. The day after the festival, Gonzalez and Henri met alone near the world tree. Sakai, watching from afar, understood what was happening by how nervous Gonzalez looked. Sakai started to feel jealous when he saw Gonzalez gently hug Henri. But as a tree, Sakai couldn't go anywhere. All he could do was silently watch the goblins fall in love. After some time, the Slime Queen finally arrived with her children. The protagonist felt happy. He didn't expect them to return to water him again. The goblins realized that the slime had done everything for the tree's sake. They always welcomed the slime and supported its efforts. They thanked the slime for working hard for the world tree. Sakai understood that things were going well. He didn't want any trouble between the slime and the goblins, and so far they were getting along just fine. Time passed. One day, Sakai noticed a girl sitting nearby on a rock. He didn't know when the child had arrived, but he remembered naming her Miyako. He tried asking if she needed anything, even though he knew no one could hear him. He was a tree after all. But to his surprise, Miyako replied that she didn't need anything. Sakai was shocked. Had she really answered him? No one should have been able to hear his voice. He asked again if she could really hear him. Miyako responded once more, saying she could hear him clearly. Then she said something even more surprising. She could see his true form. Sakai was stunned. He had always thought of himself as just a tree, but it turned out he also had a spiritual body, not just the wooden one. Sakai was shocked that Miyako could actually hear him. No one else seemed to hear his voice, so he didn't understand why she could. Miyako said she wasn't sure, but guessed that their magic power was on the same wavelength. Sakai wasn't even sure if magic had wavelengths at all. When the goblins gathered near him, Sakai started growing faster. Without noticing it at first, he was taking in their magic power like breathing air. He realized he was absorbing it just by being close. He guessed this was why he now shared the same magical wavelength as the goblins, and why they could finally understand him. Miyako smiled and said that was probably true. Now that he knew people could hear him, Sakai realized he could finally talk to everyone. Miyako asked if he wanted to. He said yes, he had always been alone, just quietly watching over them. Miyako offered to be his interpreter and Sakai thanked her. That's how Miyako became known as the Shrine Maiden of the World Tree. Later, Miyako told Rinda about it. Rinda was shocked and asked if she was serious about hearing the voice of the World Tree. Miyako insisted she was telling the truth, but Rinda still wasn't sure. He asked the World Tree to drop a fruit if it understood him. Right away, a fruit fell and hit him on the head. He picked it up, wide-eyed. He was amazed that they could really talk to the World Tree. Realizing how important this was, Rinda said he needed to tell the others. He asked the World Tree if they could hold a meeting with it. Miyako replied that the tree didn't mind. Rinda was happy. He gathered everyone to share some news. He suggested they try talking to the World Tree. Then he turned to the tree and asked if it wanted to say something to them. Miyako passed the message to the tree. After that, she asked the leader how Gonzalez and Henri were doing. Rinda was confused and asked who those names belonged to. Sakai realized that those were the names he had made up himself. Miyako explained that the World Tree had given names to everyone. Rinda was surprised and asked if it was true. She also wanted to know all of their names. So Miyako called out each goblin and told them their names. Since the goblins were curious, they agreed to be named. The leader was surprised that his name was Rinda, but he thought it sounded great. The rest of the goblins were happy to receive names from the World Tree. They realized it had been hard not having names before. Sakai felt a bit shy when they praised the names he had chosen. Then Miyako looked at Gonzalez and Henri again and asked how they were. The two of them became nervous. Miyako said the World Tree felt relieved and hoped they would live happily. Sakai was glad the goblins had another peaceful day. Some time passed. One day Benjamin came back from hunting, but he wasn't alone. Rinda welcomed him and noticed something was wrong with his arm. Benjamin explained that the animal he hunted fought back and scratched him. Then he said he had brought an orc with him. Rinda was surprised by how big the orc was. Benjamin confirmed it and said the orc had gotten lost. The orc agreed and said Benjamin had helped him. Now he wanted to stay and work with them. Rinda said it was nice to meet him because orcs were rare these days. He added that this moment would be part of their village's history and offered to introduce the orc to the World Tree. They walked to the tree and the other goblins met the orc. Miyako told Sakai that orcs were rare, not as common as goblins. But orcs weren't very smart, which made life hard for them. Their numbers were getting smaller every year. Even so, orcs were strong fighters. They were usually the ones who led in battle. Goblins, on the other hand, were better at thinking. Even with that, goblins couldn't beat humans or dragons. But if goblins worked together with orcs, they could survive better. That is the reason that they coexist. Sakai thanked her for the explanation. Rinda then introduced the orc to the World Tree as their new teammate and part of the village's defense. He said he wanted to name him Orugu and asked the World Tree what it thought. Miyako said the name was fine and Rinda was happy. Orugu said he was glad to meet everyone. Miyako gave him a fruit and said it was a welcome gift. Orugu knelt, took the fruit and ate it. As he chewed, a glow surrounded him. He evolved into a stronger form of his kind. He looked at the World Tree and Miyako. His speech became clearer, and he thanked them for the fruit, saying it was delicious. Then he turned to Rinda and Benjamin and said he looked forward to working with them. Rinda felt happy. As time passed, the village continued to grow. One day, Sakai saw werewolves in the distance. He thought they were the same ones who used to bring him the bodies of monsters as food. He hadn't seen them in a long time, so it felt good to see them again. But the werewolves were confused when they saw a goblin village under the World Tree. Their leader felt angry and let out a loud roar. A female werewolf asked what was happening and wanted to know who the goblins were. She was shocked that anyone would dare build a village around the World Tree. To them, the goblins had no right to be there. Sakai knew the werewolves were quick to fight and it made him scared. Rinda stepped forward and asked what they planned to do. Then Gonzalez and Orugu showed up with weapons. Gonzalez demanded to know who the werewolves were and warned them that this was their home now. He told them to leave right away. Sakai didn't know how, but he had to stop the fight. He shook his branches hard, trying to send a message. Gonzalez pointed to the shaking and said the World Tree was angry. But Sakai could tell they still weren't understanding him. Things were getting out of control. Just then, Miyako arrived in time. She spoke quickly and ran to Rinda. She told him something, and Rinda asked if it was true. He turned to Gonzalez and told him to stop. He explained that the World Tree didn't want them to fight the werewolves. The goblins started to calm down. However, the werewolves didn't feel the same way. Their leader asked what was happening. He didn't believe what the goblins said about the World Tree. He thought they were only saying that because they were scared. To him, the goblins were nothing more than parasites living off the World Tree. Just then, a werewolf child turned to him and said that everything the goblin girl told them was true. The World Tree didn't want them to fight. She also confirmed that the goblin girl could really hear the voice of the World Tree and was its shrine maiden. The pack leader was surprised. He asked the werewolf girl if she could also hear the voice of the tree. She said yes. He asked again to make sure, and she confirmed it once more. Sakai realized that someone from the werewolf side could also hear the World Tree's voice. Sakai felt glad that another child from the werewolves could hear him. He started to wonder if even more children could hear him too. He told them that fighting was wrong, and the girls understood his message. They asked if he had anything else to say. Sakai decided to keep speaking with the two of them. The girls held hands and shared his message with their leaders. He told them that the World Tree didn't belong to anyone. Without choosing a side, he asked them to stop fighting and live together in peace. The werewolf leader was surprised that the two girls were saying the same thing at the same time. He realized they were really hearing the voice of the World Tree. He turned to Rinda and said sorry for the misunderstanding. He had thought the goblins were using some kind of trick. Rinda also said sorry for being unfriendly. The werewolf leader then suggested they stop talking outside and go to the village. The werewolves agreed. Sakai felt happy. The werewolves and goblins had found common ground. They all decided to meet in Rinda's house to talk more about what to do next. Afterward, the werewolf leader said that their werewolf tribe would live in the village and work together with the goblins. They agreed to protect the World Tree as one group. Everyone cheered, and the village quickly held a welcome party for the werewolves. Sakai watched all of this. At first, the werewolves had been unfriendly, but now they had become allies. As a result, the village grew even more. Along with the goblins, Arachne and her spiders, and one orc, the werewolves also became part of the village. Sakai gave the werewolf leader the name Wolfram. He also gave a name to the girl who could hear his voice. He called her Mimiko. The goblins and werewolves got along well. However, the werewolves only ate meat, so they didn't eat Sakai's vegetables. Even so, the werewolves were strong fighters. They could hunt easily in the forest. Because of this, the goblins were able to eat meat more often, which made them happy. The werewolves shared their hunting skills while the goblins used their brains and building skills. Both sides helped each other. Arachne and her spiders made clothes and bedding for everyone. Life became more comfortable. Even though the werewolves had fur, winters were still cold. The clothes made it easier for them to stay warm and move around, and so the village continued to grow and improve. It became a place where many different kinds of races lived and worked together. Ever since the werewolves arrived, something unusual happened. For the first time, the usual slime didn't come. Instead, a slime queen showed up. The villagers were shocked to see her. She said it had been a long time since she last visited and noticed how much the village had changed. The villagers were surprised and asked what brought her there. She explained that she was the slime who used to water the World Tree and she was just checking in. She also asked who the new faces in the village were. Rinda was surprised and asked if she was the slime who wore a crown. She said yes and explained that it was usually her children who came in her place. Rinda was glad to see her again and told everyone that the Slime Queen was a guest and should be treated with respect. The others welcomed her warmly and apologized for not knowing she was the one helping the World Tree. The Slime Queen told them it was all right. Sakai remembered that she was the same slime who had helped him from the beginning. He told Miyako about it and shared that he helped her evolve by letting her eat his fruit. Because of that, she changed into a form that looked more human. Her body was still pale blue like a slime. He used to call her Catherine. Later at Rinda's house, he asked why the Slime Queen had come. She asked if she could live in the village. Rind was surprised but said it was okay. She said the village looked fun and thought the slimes could live there too. They could help out by cleaning waste and removing toxins. That's how Catherine and the other slimes ended up staying in the village. Sakai didn't mind, he actually felt thankful to them. Rind showed Catherine the house they had built for the slime residents. Catherine was happy. The other villagers quickly became friends with her. They even invited her to go fishing in the river. Sakai saw how well Catherine and the slimes got along with everyone. The number of special residents living under the World Tree had grown once again. Not long after, someone was secretly watching Miyako and Rinda meet. These watchers were guards hired by Mokor. Since the day seemed calm, they decided to return and report back to him. But before they could leave, a group of robed men attacked them from behind. The older guard quickly protected his partner. The attackers asked who they were and assumed they were trying to steal the World Tree. Without waiting for answers, they drew their swords and attacked. The older guard fought back, holding his ground. The younger female guard used magic to distract the enemies and told her partner they should run. She then cast a smoke spell and escaped with him. The attackers lost track of them in the smoke. The female guard worried about the older guard's injury, but he said it was more important to report everything to Mokor. At that moment, someone approached and asked what had happened. It was the bald high priest from before. He asked about the noise and confusion. The squad leader explained that things were getting worse and that other groups had also made their move. It was clear they were all after the sacred tree. The squad leader said they would handle the attackers. So far, no one had sent backup, but they were almost ready for a fight. The high priest couldn't believe a merchant was one step ahead of him. Still, he saw this as a chance to show the true power of the Eldritch Church. He swore that no one else would claim the sacred tree. He ordered everyone to move quickly and take it back. The group accepted his command with full energy. When they reached the village where the sacred tree grew, they were surprised. A village had been built near the tree, and a group of people from different races stood waiting for them. The leader of that group stepped forward and asked what was going on. Rinda and his allies glared at them. He stepped forward and warned the visitors not to come any closer. The high priest walked ahead and introduced them as members of the Eldritch Church. He was shocked that monsters had built a village near the sacred tree and had the nerve to stand against him. He told them to give the tree back right away. His group raised their weapons and moved forward, ready to fight. Gonzalez said their words were selfish, since the sacred tree didn't belong to anyone. Rinda agreed. He pointed out that the enemy had brought many fighters just to take the tree for themselves. When the attackers charged, Rinda quickly ordered his group to stop them. Urugu stood behind him and let out a loud roar. The church members were shocked to see a high orc standing with goblins. The werewolves shouted that there were even more monsters and rushed into battle. The Arachne joined the fight too. Urugu kept roaring as he threw powerful punches. The high priest, confused and angry, shouted that it was not normal for monsters to fight together. Then he ordered his group to retreat. The villagers celebrated because everything turned out well. They had won. At that moment, Miyako appeared. She said they did a good job and mentioned that the World Tree wanted to speak with them. When the leaders of the different races approached the tree, Sakai thanked them for protecting him from the strange attackers. Rinda disagreed. He said the tree had it backward. They were the ones being protected by the tree, so of course they would protect it in return. He explained that it was thanks to the tree warning Miyako about the enemy's arrival that they were ready to fight. Without that warning, they would have been in serious danger. Actually, Sakai had heard the sounds of Mokor's guards fighting members of the church. That helped him realize something was wrong in the forest. It was a good thing he was able to alert everyone. Still, he found the Eldritch Church stubborn and troublesome. He didn't think they would give up so easily. The morning after the church's attack, Mokor arrived at the village with his men. Sakai told the villagers that even though humans were often seen as enemies, Mokor was different. He asked them not to be afraid. Rinda agreed and said there was no reason to doubt the words of the World Tree. When Mokor arrived near the village, Rinda asked him what the humans wanted from them. Mokor told them to wait, saying he didn't mean any harm. Rinda could feel that he was telling the truth, but still warned the others not to come closer and to speak clearly about their purpose. The merchant agreed to this. He asked Rinda if they were also protecting the World Tree. He explained that he had once been saved by the World Tree, so they were likely on the same side. Rinda believed that Mokor was telling the truth. The merchant went on to say that they had no plans to hurt the World Tree. He only wanted to protect it. He asked if they had seen a signboard near the tree. He said he was the one who placed it there since the land where the tree stood was under his control. He also mentioned that he had placed guards around the area to protect it from dangerous people, like the ones who had shown up the other day. Rinda then guessed that they had been watching the village for some time. Mokor confirmed that they already knew about the village. Since the villagers were not harming the World Tree and were actually protecting it, he chose not to interfere. He also pointed out that he was human, while they were monsters. He believed that if he approached without care, it would only make them nervous. However, one of his lookouts had been attacked by members of the Eldritch Church the day before. These enemies were more determined and dangerous than they first thought. They had already tried to attack and would likely return with more people next time. Because the situation had become serious, the merchant suggested that they join forces. He asked if they were willing to work together to protect the World Tree. Rinda thought for a moment and agreed that Mokor's idea seemed like a good one. They also wanted to protect the World Tree but wondered if there was anything else they could gain from this. Humans had often tricked them before. Mokor then took something out of his bag and handed it to Rinda. He asked Rinda to smell what was inside. Rinda held the bag, sniffed it, and said the smell seemed familiar. When he opened it, he looked at Mokor in surprise and asked if it was pepper. Mokor confirmed it. It was a type of spice, one of the things he sold. He asked them what they thought of it. Spices were in high demand in the human world. But since the villagers were monsters, they couldn't enter cities and they didn't have money. Still, they were smart. They had even built a good village here. The problem was they had no one to trade with. So Mokor offered to trade with them. Rinda was surprised. Mokor explained that as they could see, he was a merchant. If they started a trading relationship, the village could get new items. This could help them grow and improve. Rinda admitted it sounded interesting, but one question bothered him. What would the merchant gain from all this? Could they offer something valuable in return? Mokor said he had werewolves as allies. They were skilled hunters, and hunting could bring in many valuable things like fur and bones that sold well. Rai understood and agreed to do business. He also pointed out that goblins grew vegetables, which were useful too. Slimes, he added, could give the purest water. The merchant explained that clean water like that was rare and expensive in the human world. He asked the villagers if they realized how valuable it was. Water that clean, especially after being purified by slimes, was hard to find. People paid a lot of money for it. Rai was surprised. He added that Arachne and her spiders could make good clothes and fabric. Mokor agreed and said their village had many valuable resources. He hoped they now understood. Rinda replied that Mokor was right. It was hard to say no. He shook Mokor's hand and said they had a deal. They would work together. Then he invited his new partner to continue their talk inside his house. Mokor happily agreed. When they later reached the World Tree, Mokor saw Miyako and greeted her. He asked for her name and Rinda introduced her, explaining that she was the World Tree's Shrine Maiden who could speak directly with it. Miyako said the World Tree wanted to speak with Mokor. He was surprised. She told him that the World Tree was grateful for what he had done in the past. Mokor also gave thanks. He said he was grateful for becoming a successful merchant, and had always wanted to return the favor someday. Sekai replied that he should be the one thanking Mokor. He said Mokor had done more than enough. He had put up a sign and protected him from the dangerous Eldritch Church. Sekai felt sorry for the warrior who tried to protect him but got hurt. Then a fruit dropped. The injured guard took a bite of it and was shocked when all his wounds healed instantly. The guard gave thanks to the World Tree. Sekai turned to Mokor and asked if staying out of the village's problems was part of his plan. The village was a good trading partner and also helped protect the World Tree. He guessed that was why Mokor didn't try to drive the goblins away earlier. But Mokor said he hadn't thought that far. Everything felt too overwhelming at first. That was how Mokor and the villagers came to an agreement. They would protect the World Tree, and in return, they began trading. Mokor left a few of his people behind to act as messengers and guards. They were given homes in the village. Even some humans started living there as representatives of their race. After the deal with Mokor, life in the village improved. Spices and seasonings became available, and the villagers started cooking new dishes. Their food used to be plain, but now it looked and tasted much better. Crafts also began to grow. When the first tools and equipment arrived, the villagers were amazed. Weapons, axes, and shovels appeared. They had only used simple tools before, made from forest materials the goblins could find. The new goods were of high quality, and the goblins especially enjoyed the human alcohol. When Rinda first tried the drink, he said it tasted very good. The merchant smiled and promised to bring more next time. Rinda was happy and thanked him. Later, Mokor brought even more kinds of drinks, and the goblins spent almost the whole day enjoying them. Everyone in the village liked their new way of life. Several years passed, and Sekai had grown into a very large tree. He used to feel big before, but now he was truly huge. He had become an amazing sight. Sekai even started to believe he might be something special, maybe even a divine being. Nothing in the forest was bigger than him. He thought he was the largest thing in the world. The village nearby had also changed a lot. It had grown enough to be called a small town. It now had shops, market stalls, and places where people gathered for culture and events. As the town got bigger, the forest around it grew too. Sekai started to worry that the town's growth might hurt the forest. He wondered if it was because of the energy the town gave off. But soon he realized there was nothing to fear. From his great height, he could see just how massive the forest had become. People started calling it the Great Forest of Lelgiano. No one was sure why it was named that. Some said it was named after a legendary dragon, but no one knew the full story. The village also changed in more personal ways as the lives of its people continued to grow and shift. Rinda and Miyako got married and had a child named York. Even though there was a big age gap between them, they still chose to be together because their love was mutual. Miyako grew up to be a kind and friendly girl who always stayed polite. Their wedding was a large event. On that day, Benjamin drank too much and ended up dancing without clothes. Most of the villagers felt jealous of Rinda since he married someone much younger. Still, they respected him as a strong and dependable leader. Gonzalez and Henri also got married and had twins, a boy and a girl named Riku and Sora. Both children showed skill in physical activities just like their father. Gonzalez cheered loudly when he watched them train, proud to see his traits in them. Sora lifted a club and told her father she would crush a boar's head with it. The twins were good-looking and became popular among the villagers. The most surprising partner was Benjamin's. He married Mimiko, the shrine maiden from the werewolf tribe. Mimiko grew up to be strict and fair. She walked up to her husband and called out to him with a sharp voice. Benjamin flinched and asked what was wrong. She became angry that he even had to ask. He had promised to take care of Emerald. Mimiko charged at him with a stick in hand. He tried to defend himself and said he had just forgotten. Their child, born from a goblin and a werewolf, was the first of his kind. They named him Emerald, after the precious stone. He became the first known wolf goblin in the village. Meanwhile, the leader of the werewolves, Wolfram, married a werewolf named Hannah, the most beautiful among the female werewolves. They had a child and named him Jonas. They were training Jonas at an early age since he would have to become the next leader of the werewolf tribe. Changes also happened in the spider pack led by Arachne. A new kind of spider appeared called jungle tarantulas. They had small bodies and moved quickly. Their job was to scout the forest with the best mobility. At the same time, more orcs came to live in the village. Luckily, some of them were females, so they were able to start families and have children. Now there were 15 orcs living in the village. Orugu and his wife, along with their child, were in charge of keeping the village safe. These brave defenders were ready to fight back against any threat, but the changes didn't stop there. One day, Sakai felt a small tremor. The shaking grew stronger, and the villagers noticed a shift in magical energy. Suddenly, a bright light glowed around the world tree. Not far from the village, a group of elves stood on a hill. When they saw the light, they knew right away. This was the rebirth of the world tree. The elven squad raised their hands and glowing magic circles appeared above them. All the elves seemed to fall into a trance as they kept reaching toward the sky, chanting something like a spell. The villagers were confused and didn't understand what was happening. Rinda said he had no idea either. The elves had just arrived and suddenly magic had filled the air. Miyako stepped forward and demanded they stop. One of the elves called them shameless and ugly monsters and swore to drive them away. A powerful magical vortex then appeared and formed a huge fireball. She called the villagers under the world tree as parasites and told them to perish. Just then, Sakai called out to the elves to stop. The leader of the group, Era, was shocked. Even the others paused. This caused the huge fireball to disappear. Era asked with wonder if that voice belonged to the world tree. Sakai was surprised too. Could she really hear his voice? All the elves began to cry from the overwhelming feeling. They said they could hear everything. As elves, they were chosen people by the world tree. They could hear the world tree's words anywhere in the world. Sakai realized that all of them could hear his voice. That would make the conversation easier. He told them that fighting was not allowed. The elves listened carefully. Era pointed at the villagers and called them beasts and monsters, but her words were cut off when her mouth was suddenly covered by a silk web from Arachne. Sakai told everyone to stay calm, reminding them that everyone here lived in peace. He said that if the elves were on the side of the world tree, then they should try to get along with everyone. Era no longer resisted. If the world tree had spoken, she had no right to argue. She turned to the goblins and apologized for calling them ugly and shameless monsters earlier. She also said sorry for the trouble they had caused. Miyako then asked why they were here and if they had a connection to the world tree. She explained that the tree itself wanted to know. Era, surprised, asked if Miyako could understand the world tree. The goblin girl calmly said yes. Era then shared something important. The previous world tree was already dead. Sakai was surprised by what she said, but everything soon made sense. He found out that he was the next world tree. There had been one before him, but it had already died. Era explained that the previous tree had passed away recently, so they began looking for a new one. They had traveled a long distance before arriving here and were shocked to see a town built around the world tree already. Sakai quietly noted that the tree was already dead. He asked Era what a world tree was in the first place and how many existed in the world. Era told him that there could only be one. The largest tree in the world becomes the world tree. When a new one takes its place, the old one dies right away. Since Sakai grew to become the largest tree in the world, the previous one withered away. Sakai realized that the previous world tree had died because of him and felt guilty about it. However, he remembered that the goblins had called him the world tree before. Era explained that the goblins probably sensed that he was meant to become the new world tree, like a foresight. Sakai was surprised. Even if it was true, he still felt guilty that the old tree had died. Era gently said it wasn't his fault. It was the natural principle of the world. When a new world tree was born, the previous would simply wither away. Sakai accepted that. Era added that the elves would no longer harm the city. In fact, they were happy to meet everyone. Sakai said he was fine with them staying but wondered what the goblins thought. Miyako replied that the goblins didn't mind. The elves were the followers of the world tree, so they couldn't just drive them away. Sakai understood. He hoped everyone would get along. The elves then officially became part of the town. Everything was settled quickly. It turned out they knew a lot about the world tree and Sakai hoped to learn more from them. Era then introduced him to the other elves. Their names were El, Elin, and Eleanor. Sakai thought they all had similar names, which made them hard to remember. Their faces also looked alike and he had trouble telling them apart. Still, they were very smart and knew magic. Sakai worried if they could get along with the werewolves and goblins, but it turned out he had nothing to worry about. The elves quickly found work in the city and earned their place. They could start a fire with just magic, surprising the townspeople. The wolves were especially happy when the elves made an ice box to keep meat fresh. They also helped dry laundry in no time. However, with the arrival of the elves, a new problem came up. There was no place for them to stay. Miyako apologized and told them they would have to stay in the gathering hall for now because there were no empty houses. Era asked why they couldn't just build one. Rinda replied that while goblins were good builders, they didn't use magic and couldn't build a house overnight. They first needed to gather materials, which would take several days, but Era said she never meant for the goblins to build it. Rinda was confused and asked what she meant. Era explained that the world tree could help. With its power, building houses was easy. She asked the tree if it could help. Sakai didn't refuse, but he didn't know what he could actually do. All he thought he could manage was to drop a few branches. Era looked puzzled and asked if he still didn't know his own powers. She said the previous world tree had built many things, not just houses, using its power. Sakai was surprised. He didn't know the tree could do that and asked how. Era explained that the old tree had shaped its roots to build. That was all it needed. Roots alone could become a house. Sakai finally understood. He had never thought of using his roots that way. He had only used them to grow vegetables before. Now he wondered, could he really turn them into something else? Sakai asked everyone to wait because he wanted to try something. He gave himself a task, to grow his roots to the surface. When he did, a solid house suddenly appeared in front of the surprised villagers. Rinda couldn't believe his eyes. Benjamin was amazed too. It looked like something magical, an entire house made in seconds. But then, something went wrong. The house quickly fell apart. The villagers were confused. How could something made by the world tree collapse? Era said it seemed like Sakai hadn't reached his full strength yet. Even though he looked big, he was still growing. She added that the last world tree also failed the first time. Sakai realized that meant he still had a lot of room to improve. Maybe he needed to use his imagination more. He believed he could do much more, but still felt a bit upset. He had thought he had built a strong house, but it broke apart too fast. He had wanted to be helpful. Out loud, he apologized to the villagers for being so weak. Rinda disagreed. He told the world tree not to think of itself that way. Besides, it wasn't a waste. Even though the house fell, they now had building materials. They could just rebuild it, and it would take less time than starting from nothing. Sakai sighed and said he understood. He would try again. He pushed out more roots. Ryan said it might fall again, but that wasn't a big problem. They just needed to make the structure stronger. Then they could build a simple house quickly. Era agreed and thanked the city leader. Sakai made the foundation using his roots, and the goblins strengthened them and started building again. After a few hours, the goblins finished some houses good enough for sleeping in. At the same time, Sakai slowly began to understand how his power worked. He didn't need the help of the goblins anymore. Sakai was able to create a strong, beautiful house almost by himself. Rinda was amazed. It would have taken them a long time to build something so big and solid, but Sakai did it in no time. Benjamin pointed out that it was also their first time working together with the World Tree. Era thanked everyone who helped. Now that the houses were done, she said she wanted to take a bath. She asked Rindo where the bathroom was. Confused, Rindo asked what bath she was talking about. Era was shocked when she realized that the town didn't have a bathhouse. Benjamin, confused by her reaction, told her there was a river nearby and that it should be enough. But Era strongly disagreed. Thinking about it made her feel like everyone in town was a little dirty. Miyako looked at herself and began to shake. Frustrated, Era asked Sakai to build a bathhouse immediately. Sakai agreed to try. At the elves' request, construction began. Like before, Sakai used his magic to create the materials and foundation, while the goblins did the building. This time, the elves helped more closely. They used their magic to lift heavy things and work together with the goblins. The elves also used their magic to heat the water. After a few hours, the public bathhouse was finished. It looked so nice that everyone who saw it was impressed. When Rinda and Wolfram stepped inside, Ryan admired how having a building with hot water felt like a luxury. Wolfram sighed at how warm it was. Ellis suggested they try soaking in the water to feel the difference compared to the river. The others agreed. When a large wooden tub was filled with hot water and scented oils, Rinda and Wolfram got in. The warm bath felt amazing, and they couldn't hide how much they enjoyed it. With the elves' arrival, new traditions began. Men and women bathed separately. A mixed bath area was also added for elders and families. The townspeople loved the new idea. Sakai let out a deep sigh. He was tired and thought it would be nice to soak in the hot spring, or at least wash off in cool water. It was late in the evening and the town was quiet. Sakai heard footsteps and saw Era arriving with her group. They were carrying buckets of water. They felt thankful to the World Tree, whom had clearly worked hard to help them. They didn't know how to properly thank him. Era said he must be tired and should get some good rest. The elves poured water over his roots. Sakai enjoyed the feeling. It felt refreshing. He felt alive again. The next morning, Sakai still felt tired. He wondered if it was because he had used too much power the day before. It seemed like using such a strong ability came with a cost. He realized he had to use his imagination and think carefully when using it. If he had a brain, it would probably feel tired too. When he created vegetables before, he didn't feel this drained, but the house he made yesterday was much bigger, and he used more energy than usual. He also noticed he had become a little shorter because he used some of his roots. He knew he needed more practice to use his power properly. There was also something new that came with the elves, their special alcohol. Wolfram really liked it because of its sweet taste. It made his whole body feel warm. Rinda was curious about how it was made. Sakai had heard a strange rumor that it required elven saliva. But since elves were beautiful, nobody seemed to mind. This drink was also said to be healthy, and could even help you live longer. Sakai watched everyone enjoying the drink. It seemed like alcohol was a big deal here, and people were happy with it. The number of people living in the city had grown a lot. Each group had their own area. There was one world tree, 150 goblins, 90 werewolves, 30 elves, 25 humans, 5 arachnes with extra spider-like monsters, 15 orcs, 1 slime girl with many normal slime, and 5 wolf goblin hybrids. The arachnids lived high in the world tree, while the others stayed near the base. At first, the merchants from Mokor came just to observe. They didn't understand how people could live with monsters, but over time, they became friends with everyone. If someone asked why Sakai didn't talk much about the arachne, the answer was simple. They lived at the top of the tree and rarely spoke with those below. They loved sewing clothes, which helped them get along with others. Their way of life was different, and they only came down a few times a year, usually during festivals. Speaking of festivals, one very evening, the elves gathered around the world tree and prayed. It seemed to be part of their daily tradition. Curious, Sakai decided to ask why they did it. Era explained that faith was important for the world tree to grow. The more people who believed in it, the stronger it became. Era added that their prayers helped the tree gain power. Sakai thought about it. It was true. He always grew stronger whenever people or creatures gave thanks to him. He realized that it was because of their faith. The elves had always been thankful to the world tree, and their prayers had made a difference. Era said the protagonist should have gathered enough faith and power by now. She asked him to show them his true form. Sakai was confused since he was standing right there. But Era explained that with enough faith, he could create a humanoid clone, a form that would let him move and act more freely. Sakai was amazed. If what she said was true, it meant he could do something incredible. Era then raised her arms and called on the world tree to reveal its true form. That is the end of the recap at Chapter 6. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.